What's going on, folks? Sean Long here from NintendoEnthusiast.com, and today we are doing an interview with a very special guest. You guys may remember a certain Nintendo device called the Power Glove, which was pretty damn rad, as Lucas said in The Wizard. And today I have with me two guys who are trying to turn that into a documentary. Their campaign is currently on Kickstarter right now, and these are my guests. Guys, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm one of the directors of the Power of Glove.
And I'm Andrew, and I'm also one of the directors of The Power of Glove.
So a documentary on the Power Glove. Now that's sort of an interesting thing. What sort of inspired, a full documentary on the Power Glove?
You want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So the original idea came from our co-director, Paula Kozowski, and she, pitched it to us one day, and she had been seeing a lot of trending things on YouTube where people were modifying the Power Glove and making art projects out of it or doing YouTube reviews, and she was curious as to why this gimmick, this sort of like failed Nintendo peripheral still had an afterlife so many years after its release. And you don't often see that with just crummy toys. And so we started to do some research and tried to find, if anybody had really told the full story of the Power Glove. And what we found was that there was a lot of misinformation on the internet and that the story hadn't really ever been told fully.
Now, did you have a Power Glove originally when you were kids, or did you skip out on that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a Power Glove when I was a kid, but I think like most people, I was a little bit too young to really understand it and how it operated, so it ended up being thrown into the back of my closet, and I might have used it as like some sort of like spaceman thing, but yeah, I never really used it as a gaming device.
Right.
Yeah, and I never had one, but my story is very similar to what we hear from a lot of people. Is that later in life I found a friend who had one, and when I first saw it as a kid, I had no idea what it was. I knew it looked awesome, but definitely never used it as a functional gaming controller. It was more just a fun little costume accessory you could wear.
Right.
It looked so radical.
Yeah, I think that comes around a lot. Is a lot of people had a friend who had one, or a friend of a friend who had one, and nobody really got to really experience the way you're supposed to play games with the Power Glove. I know trying to play Mario with a Power Glove, that dog isn't gonna hunt. So yeah, it doesn't happen. So it's like a friend of a friend, and it's sort of, I mean, that's what's so intriguing about it, is because it is that sort of it's the myth and the legend of it. It is like I had a friend who had it, and he said it sucked, and yeah.
Now, how long has the documentary been in production?
It's been in production for over a year, and we've already done a good chunk of interviews with our own funding, just out of pocket. But it's interesting because we keep learning about new people who are hacking it, and also new people doing music with it and with the Power Glove and stuff like that. But it's also been a much more complicated story than we originally thought it might be. When we first set out doing this documentary, we thought we'd find maybe a couple people who could be reasonably deemed the inventors of the Power Glove, and as we found out, it's really dozens of people who all put really hard work into the Power Glove's invention. So it's become a much more complicated story than just invention release that we initially envisioned.
When we first started working on this film, we really thought a lot about how when you're little, it seems like these toys that you have just sort of materialize out of thin air. The G.I. Joes, the Power Gloves, things like that. You just mash a button and they appear, but that's not true. They have an entire development process. And for the Power Glove, there's one that's particularly interesting. So getting to the bottom of that and kind of investigating not only our childhood, but an entire generation's childhood is something that we really wanted to do.
Now, I noticed you guys have a lot of different people who you interviewed. Like you said, you have some of the people who are in the development of the Power Glove musicians. I even saw the infamous Triforce Johnson on there. How was it talking with all those people? Did they all sort of have similar stories, or was it just so varied that it made for a good watch?
With all the people that we've interviewed in terms of the creative repurposers, the people who are keeping the Power Glove alive, they do come from different age groups. So some of them were too old to really be around and get excited about the Power Glove as this sort of thing that's going to revolutionize Nintendo games. But they still immediately saw the potential in it for remodification, for hacking purposes. We interviewed a professor at Columbia University, who back in his day had, in the early 90s, had modified it to be an electronic blues instrument.
Right, the Blues-O-Matic.
The Blues-O-Matic. So he wasn't 11 years old when the Power Glove came out, but he still could recognize that this is actually a functional piece of hardware that, if you know what you're doing with it, can actually be really interesting. And so I think that's the one unifying element of these people, is that most people saw the Power Glove as this failure, as this thing that came out, it didn't do what it said it was going to do, and then you just toss it in the closet and forget about it. But these people, for whatever reason, they all saw that, no, you can actually do things with this, even though it didn't serve its original purpose.
Right. I think just like the creators of the Power Glove, they also recognized the potential that was inherent in the glove and the possibility that it sort of had for what the future might hold for gesture-based devices. And in that regard, it was light years ahead of what was currently available. And one of the things that we're really trying to dig into in the film is that. So.
All right, so you guys are currently on Kickstarter right now, and you have reached roughly 60% of your goal. Things are looking good. Are you excited? Do you think that the trend is going positive and you guys will meet your goal? And if not, what will happen with the Power of Glove documentary?
Yeah, this is our first Kickstarter campaign that we've ever launched, and we're really thrilled at the positive reception that we've had so far. And we realize that it's hard. We're asking people for money, and that always feels weird. But based on the trends, I guess it looks like we'll meet our goal. But at the same time, it's always just such an unpredictable field out there. And I know there are so many other really cool projects on Kickstarter and on Indiegogo that also really look like they could use money and just are really cool projects. But it's one of those nerve-wracking things where I know a lot of people, even though they want to donate, they see a time and say, like, oh, this project has 20 days left, and then they decide, oh, well, I'll just do it next week, and then they forget. So I feel like a lot of times projects end up doing really well at the very end, and that's always just a very nerve-wracking experience.
Yeah, I just like to add that we're extremely appreciative to everybody who's given to the campaign so far. And I mean, not only that, but just to the people who have gotten the word out there for us and helped us sort of get this on the internet and gain awareness for this, which also includes you, obviously. So, just like thank you for that and for this interview.
As far as the possibility of us not getting funded, and that's a real possibility, Kickstarter, as you know, is all or nothing. We've already invested thousands of our own dollars into this film, and it's obviously a film that we are very passionate about. And I assume that if we weren't to get funded, we'd have to look elsewhere for money, and I can tell you that it would take a lot longer for the movie to finally come out if Kickstarter were not to be successful.
Now, obviously, Kickstarter is something that we've been extremely excited about and wanted to use, because the great thing about Kickstarter is you're not beholden to anyone. There's no compromise in the way that we make the film, and obviously if we don't make our goal on Kickstarter and we have to seek funding elsewhere, there might be concessions and compromises to the story itself, which in the end wouldn't be fair to the people that made the Power Glove as well as the other participants in the film.
Well, there's still a lot of great rewards left. There's a lot of cool tiers. There's T-shirts, DVDs, even VHS tapes. So if you guys haven't checked out their Kickstarter campaign, please be sure to do so. I'm going to put a link in the description box below, and there'll be a link on the website to check it out as well. I want to thank these guys for coming in and talking with Nintendo enthusiasts about the Power of Glove documentary. And do you guys have anything left to say?
All right. No, we just want to thank you so much for your support and taking the time to show some interest in our project. And yeah, check out our Kickstarter page and get your glove on.
This glove. Thank you.